Welcome everyone to our session started up from the Barbados Together initiative, which is coming out of the Ministry of Tourism. I want to welcome everyone this evening to our candid conversations on COVID, mental health, and more. My name is Gail Springer. I'm your moderator for this evening, and I have panelists, Jeffrey Roach, our incoming president of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Tanisha Holder from the Barbados Marketing and Tourism Inc. And we have Dr. David Beyer, one of our panelists, as well as Reverend Anderson Kelman, who will be sharing with us good topics about managing stress, etc., in this pandemic that we're going through. I'm sorry, but I'm a bit nervous, and I'm not usually known to be nervous, but I'm nervous, and I'm under stress. So I really need to be distressed. So I want to benefit from this session. So I'm going to relax. So welcome again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the session. And I will hand over now to Jeffrey Roach, who is our incoming president of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, for his opening and introductory remarks. And I hope you enjoy our webinar. Thank you. Jeffrey?
Thank you, Gail. Good evening to all. Welcome to this afternoon session on Candid Conversations on COVID-19, mental health, and more. This session is the second in a series of webinars that have come out of an initiative, as Gail mentioned, from the Ministry of Tourism through the formation of a tourism task force to look at the industry and to determine some of the things that we can do in this time to, one, help get us through this period, and two, prepare us for the re-emergence of tourism so that Barbados emerges stronger and in a better position than we were before. You know, when this is all over, and it shall pass, we will have all the destinations across the world that are tourism destinations competing to get passengers to come back to their destinations. And we want to ensure that as far as possible, we are better positioned to do that than we were when COVID struck us. This afternoon session, as I said, is the second session. The first one was held earlier this week and was targeted specifically at the managers and leaders in the organizations. This is the first mass-based session for all persons in the tourism and hospitality industry. And over the next week and a half to 2 weeks, there will be a number of other sessions that at the end of this evening session, we'll give you some information on those sessions that are coming up. The decision to go with these sessions came out of a needs analysis that was conducted by a subgroup of the Human Resource Development team. And while we thought that it was necessary to focus on technical skills development, it was also seen as necessary to focus on some of the softer issues that we needed to address. You know, this last 2.5 months has not been easy for, I don't think, any of us. You know, I've been working from home, and some mornings I wake up and think to myself, oh my gosh, not another day. You know, I gotta really put an effort into motivate myself to get up and get going. But, you know, I have to, because I know the industry depends on me, it depends on you, it depends on all of us being prepared and doing what we need to do to take it forward. So like Gail said, I too am looking forward to hearing from Dr. Beyer and Reverend Kelman this afternoon. I am trusting that some of what they say will be motivating to me. And but tomorrow is Saturday, so I don't need to get up as early tomorrow, but early next week. When I need to jump out of bed on Tuesday morning, you know, gung ho, that I can reflect on some of what is said this evening, steady myself and move forward. So Gail, turn back up to you, and I know we'll give a brief update on the upcoming sessions at the end of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And it's quite true what Jeffrey said. This session is really for all of us, not only leaders, but also employees across the tourism sector. And not only tourism, we've extended this to retail, taxi drivers, anybody that interfaces with a tourist or a frontline worker. So as far as customs officials, immigration officials. We've invited them to these webinars because we feel it important that people have some sort of engagement while you're at home. And not only can you be engaged about this industry that you are so excited about and you give your all to, the fact is you need to know that the industry is doing something for you and that we are doing something here as leaders to see what we can do to make this industry come back the way that we know it can be and come back stronger and better. And one of those arms of our leadership and one of the arms of government that is involved in that process so much is the BTMI. And we are fortunate to have with us Tanisha Holder, who is the marketing manager of the BTMI, and she is going to share what the Barbados government and the BHTA and all the tourism entities are doing in the marketplace in our source markets to attract and engage those guests and those visitors who are so critical to our economy to come back to Barbados. And I want to hand over to Tanisha, and I'm sure that her presentation is going to be enlightening and fill us with a bit of upliftment and hope that there is a future beyond COVID for tourism. Over to you, Tanisha.
Thank you, Gail, and good evening to all of our panelists and to those who've joined us this evening. As mentioned, my name is Tanisha Holder, Acting Director of Marketing at the BTMI. And these sessions serve to, as Jeffrey would have mentioned, strategize and help lead us into the relaunch of our product. As he mentioned, we must re-enter the market better than we left. And it's with these webinars and through these sessions that we hope to retool, reskill, and do what is necessary to ensure that we do re-enter better than we would have left. We recognize that these are challenging times, and as such, we say it's important to connect with you and share a bit of what has been happening in our source markets. Now, as we know, the commercial airspace is currently closed up until the end of June. And for many of our source markets, we are monitoring to see whose doors open first. But we continue to be guided, as our Prime Minister would have mentioned, not by a date, but by when our standardized protocols are in place, as it relates to everything travel. So as a consequence, we have seen significant closure, as you know, across the hotels, and we understand that this situation, it does remain fluid. It changes day by day, sometimes within the hours. And as a consequence, we continue to negotiate with our partners as we prepare for our reopening. Now, you've probably heard this quote way too many times throughout this time. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. But it's really with that in mind that the BTMI has sought to maintain a strong brand presence across our markets, in an effort to keep Barbados top of mind in the minds of potential visitors. So I'll share briefly a bit of what we were doing, what we have been doing and what we're currently doing from a marketing and communication standpoint. So in the early stages, we were focused on our crisis communications, keeping persons informed about the situation on the ground in Barbados. And while that continues to play a major role in our communication efforts with our partners and our wider audience, we've developed further a messaging framework that builds and guides how we communicate. Now, this framework consists of three messaging pillars. You can consider these pillars to be structures that anchor or support our voice in the market. The first pillar is called Reflect. And this is really about connecting with past visitors and creating a sense of nostalgia as they immerse themselves in the content shared on our social and our digital pages. Now, through a campaign launch, and I'll share a bit about that campaign later, through a campaign launch called My Barbados, #MyBarbados, we reminded persons about all the things that they love about the island, all the food, the people, the places, the views, all the things that they loved, encouraging them to reflect and post their favorite memories of our island with the world. And we saw great traction with this particular campaign online as persons were excited to share even without us asking about particular memories that they were fond of. Now, this phase also included the development of a destination video, which spoke directly to our audiences in our source markets. As the world battled this pandemic, we empathize with them, reminding them that we're right there, we're right here, and we're waiting to safely welcome them again. We've now transitioned to the second phase, resolve. This is where we show the world the resilient ways that we are keeping the Bajan spirit alive, providing them with opportunities to feel as though they're right here with us. This phase is a bit more interactive, including campaigns such as Lime for Bajan, which includes some culinary and creative demos. It also includes a segment called, one of my favorites really, Barbados: A Dream Away, where we invite viewers for just 60 seconds. We know that persons are bogged down with information and content coming their way left, right, and center. We ask persons to, for 60 minutes, immerse themselves in a place outside of their current reality, a place that they have fond memories. So we take some time and we showcase the picturesque sites that we have here on the island. And our final phase is, in this pillar, is rekindle. Now, as we prepare to welcome back visitors to our shore, we know that a lot is riding on each traveler's next trip. And we want to ensure that that trip is with us and that it's the best that they'll ever experience. Now, in this phase, we're saying to visitors, it's time to plan your return. On the screen, you will see just a bit of what we would have been sharing on social and some of the engagement that we would have received. There's a video that I'll play a bit later in the presentation, which will show this in further detail. Now, you can't see any of these figures, bear with me, but feel free to take me at my word. We were doing quite well with our level of engagement on our social media channels, actually leading across the Caribbean compared to our primary competitors. Throughout the thousands of likes, shares, comments, this definitely showed that we haven't lost touch with our marketplace. I'll take this time now to share with you the video, the brand video that we would have developed for phase one, along with some of our activities in market.
We may be a little island, but we've got big heart. Things are a little quiet now, but we've got big hopes. It may take a while until we see you again, but we've got big plans. So as you dream of brighter days, just remember, Barbados will be here. From Bridgetown to Oistins Bay, inside and out, through and through. We may be a little island, but we're bigger and stronger with you. So take care, stay safe, and stay joyful. The time will come when we say, welcome, Barbados Nice.
And welcome on board of Aida Perla. My name is Boris Becker. I'm the captain on board and I'm here with nearly 1,000 crew members. Many of you have most probably seen us in the last month when looking out of the window towards the roads of Barbados, where we were anchored with also some other cruise ships aside of us. After being your guests for more than 1 month, we have now finally lifted our anchor and are proceeding in direction of Europe to bring home the remaining of our crew members. The last weeks for sure were and still are a challenging time for all of us. For you ashore, on the island, for us here on board of the ships, and for the whole tourism and cruise industry. However, in those difficult times, connected with all these challenges and things to do and things to think of, you sometimes can see where are your real friends and where are the people you can really rely on. We want to send a big thank you, Barbados, from us here on board to you on the island, like we already did with our light installation upon departure. because all the support we got from you, the Barbadians, during these difficult times is for sure not taken for granted. For those working at sea, home is far away, and we rely on and we depend on all the ports on our routes to give us support in our daily operations. However, in this crisis, we saw around the world that even for ships with absolutely no health issues, like also here on board Aida Perla, more and more doors were closing. On Barbados, things were different though. While on the one hand, still guaranteeing the safety of everybody, of course, living on the island, taking the necessary precautions and decisions, on the other hand, the doors were not closed for us. Everybody, starting from the Prime Minister, over the senators, agencies, port workers, airport workers, taxi drivers, and many other Barbadians really helped us, really supported us, and not only when we are coming with passengers and business, but also in those critical stages. We are very grateful for this and will for sure not forget how you supported us and how we could rely on you in those difficult times. We will be back, bringing passengers and business to the island as soon as the seas are a little bit calmer again. Thank you for everything. We love you, Barbados. See you soon.
Now, as you can see, we definitely received a lot of love from those who visited our shores and those who would have come to our island, and we continue to connect with them, even though we're apart during this time. Now, we understand that the task ahead is not easy by any stretch of the imagination, and we see the need to strategically plan our re-entry into the market. We're compelled, as we mentioned before, to come back stronger than we left. And we've been taking this time to refresh our brand and our brand positioning in the market through some efforts that we've been doing with our partners, along with the BHTA and other ministries as well. We recognize that getting our timing right is everything. And we will continue to monitor our competitor and our consumer sentiments, the continuous changes that occur in markets, because we know it'll be critical for us to get these insights to help develop our marketing and our communications plans so that our approach is most effective and most impactful. There's no doubt that persons will want to revisit our islands. There's no doubt that they'll want to come back to beautiful Barbados. There's no doubt that tourism will flourish again. Our challenge is to strategically navigate this process, recognizing the part that we each play in the sector. And I look forward to all that will be shared in the upcoming webinars. I know that we're going to receive some great insights tonight, as well as next week and the weeks to come. So I invite you to stay connected, stay tuned in, and take as much as you can as we build a better Barbados together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanisha. And I'm sure that many of you that have joined us this evening will have questions. And I'm asking you that we're going to hold all the questions till at the end of the session. We'll have maybe about half an hour for questions. And I would wish if you would post your questions in the Q&A or question and answers chat, and we will take them at the end of the session for all the panelists. Very important. Thanks, Tanisha, for that great update on what we're doing in our markets to keep our visitors engaged and loving Barbados as we get out of, come out of this COVID situation. However, we are still here, and many of us, and you know, I started out a bit shaky, and I'm sure the reason why I'm shaky is because the amount of things, my job, I'm an HR practitioner. And maybe from 8 o'clock this morning, or maybe from 6 this morning, I would say, I've been dealing with issues regarding people who either are away from work, are going to go away from work during this period. There are quite a number of people who are at home and who, for all intents and purposes, like all the panelists here, are wondering what will happen, what's the uncertainty. And one of the things that we discovered while we were discussing this program of interventions that we were putting together, we said that it's okay to be focusing on skills and upskilling and so on, but let us look after how people are feeling during this time. It's very important to look after how people are feeling, because if you're not feeling in a positive way and you feel as if you can take on the world, then you won't be able to concentrate on any training or any skilling that you have to do. There are many, many things that we have to balance with kids being at home, all the social distancing. There's so many things that we have to balance, and I have to balance those every day for people. Unfortunately for us today, we have two practitioners and two well-qualified persons who have agreed to be our panelists today. And one is Dr. David Baer, and the other is Anderson Kelman. And they are going to take us through a journey of what we should know about helping us to mitigate this period, helping us to be more resilient in this period that we're going through. David, in particular, I've known him for a very long time, and many of you would know him because you see him on television all the time. I mean, he's on television all the time. And he really is a practicing specialist in emergency physician for quite a number of years. He's actually the consultant emergency physician at the QEH Hospital with special responsibility for pre-hospital emergency care, specifically the Barbados Emergency Ambulance Service. In addition, he's the medical director for Sandy Crest Medical Center and Coverley Medical Center. So he is actually at the front line of this type of activity. And what he's going to be doing for us today is taking us through some medical information, giving us medical information on how we can keep our families and ourselves safe during this period. And even when we go back out to work, he may be able to point us in that direction as to how to keep safe in those periods. You know, next week, the economy is opening up a little bit more, and therefore we need not to be complacent. There's certain things that we still have to follow if we don't want to end up where we were on the 23rd, between the 23rd and the 28th of March, when we had to lock down the country. So I want to invite David to now make his presentation, and we will take questions after. Over to you, David.
Sure. Thank you very much to everyone out there. Thanks for joining. Thanks for that lovely introduction. So what I seek to do is to bring the science to you in a manner that is easily understandable. One caveat, you know, I'm not a part of the policymaking team in terms of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. I believe that may come, those sessions may come at a later time. But what I wanted to do was just to bring the science for you, and it's an evolving story in that, you know, what we've learned at the start is pretty much changed to what we know now. And day by day, week by week, month by month, we learn more about this condition and more in terms of how to prepare for it. So I'll take you through that. So go to the first slide. Right. So this COVID-19, so it's an infectious disease caused by a virus called the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is a big name and stuff. And this is from the family of coronaviruses, known primarily for the common cold, but this is far away from the common cold. And this virus was basically discovered late last year in China, and it has spread globally, and it has become a major public health challenge worldwide. Of note, though, we've been down this road already a few times. In 2003, there was SARS. In 2012, there were MERS. So this is probably the third spillover to humans of these animal coronaviruses. Of course, there are more viruses like Ebola, which is also spilt over from animals to humans. So we're down this road again. The timeline, basically, in terms of what has happened, basically, as I said, in early December in a place called Wuhan, Hubei province in China, that's where they first isolated it. And then basically it was found, these folk were getting ill, they identified the virus, and they had their first death in China in like early January. From there, it quickly spread into Thailand, and to the point that by the end of the month, the World Health Organization had recognized it as a public health emergency of international concern and reached out to the international community to say to be prepared that this is a serious virus to come. It was officially named in early February. The virus name, as I said, is SARS-CoV-2. However, the condition is called COVID-19, and it was declared a pandemic, meaning that it had widespread country involvement over 188 countries now in early March, and we had our first 2 cases in mid-March. Next slide. Right, so as it stands, I had to update this slide here perhaps maybe 2 or 3 times today because the numbers basically are escalating minute by minute, hour by hour. So up to maybe about 3, 4 o'clock, this is when we knew that worldwide there were about 5.8 million people infected, with like 360,000 people being unfortunately passing away. But importantly, about 2.4 million people had recovered. The US has been one of the hardest hit countries, along with, I know that's one of our main tourist industry providers, along with the UK, Brazil, etc. They have had their share of cases. They just topped 103,000 deaths. CARICOM, we've been spared a little bit in that we've only had like 2,800 people infected. This is on the Caribbean Public Health Agency site with like 99 deaths, which is small compared to what's happening in the major world. Here in Barbados, for our population, we've had 92 people infected, we've had 7 deaths, and to the skills and the luck of all, we've had 71 folk who have recovered completely. Right, so how is this virus transmitted? And the main thing you hear about, and this is something to note, is that the predominant mode of transfer is via droplets. So yeah, we know that we produce droplets when we cough and we sneeze, but importantly, what came on afterwards is that we also produce droplets when we laugh, when we talk, and even when we breathe. And I'll come back to this here in a few in terms of basically the rationale for the cloth mask, but just remember this, that's not only when we cough and sneeze, we produce droplets, it's when we laugh, when we talk, when we breathe. So basically you get infected through direct exposure where these droplets, you either inhale them or they go in your mouth, your eyes, into your nose, and actually find their way into the system. The other way is through indirect exposure to contaminated surfaces. So if these droplets go on surfaces, they can actually be there for up to 72 hours. And that also has led to the call for enhanced cleaning. There is some airborne transfer, particularly in the medical environment where we do procedures. And unknown to most, it is also spread by fecal oral. And fecal oral is common, as you know, in terms of gastroenteritis. The move has been to wash your hands, etc. But the virus can be spread in terms of in the feces. It is a highly transmissible virus, as seen by the number of cases, and the incubation period is usually like 4 to 5 days. It has ranged from 1 to 14 days, but 4 to 5 days from the time you're infected to the time you get symptoms. That's the commonly accepted period. Right, so if you do get sick, this are the common symptoms. You may get fever, cough, it may be a dry cough, or it may be a wet cough, you're bringing up stuff. fatigue, muscle and joint pain, sore throat, nasal congestion also being basically some of the common symptoms observed initially. And then it may progress to having difficulty breathing as it further infects the lungs. Now, and as I said, it has evolved whereby there are some symptoms that have come up after the initial symptoms were identified. People have found that patients were experiencing loss of taste or loss of smell, as well as diarrhea is seen to be a pretty common symptom in a lot of patients as well. And recently in terms of skin symptoms, where people are having skin manifestations of the disease. Right, so we know that it affects all age groups from basically 0 to 100. So anybody can be infected. Most cases though tend to be mild to moderate. In fact, 80% or so the cases are mild to moderate. It's only probably maybe 15, 20% that you may require some level of hospitalization and may go on to have critical illness. Most people tend to recover within 14 days as for the typical virus, but we found that the worst outcomes, meaning if you do get it, now these people aren't more prone to get it, so just to make that clear, everybody has the same risk of getting it. However, if these particular groups do get it, they're found to fare worse. The elderly, people greater than 65, people who smoke excessively, and patients who have chronic underlying conditions, especially if they're poorly controlled. So if you have poorly controlled heart problems, cardiovascular disease, poorly controlled diabetes, hypertension, poorly controlled respiratory, kidney problems, cancers, even obesity, they've found that those subgroups of patients tend to fare worse if they do get the actual illness. So just a little bit in terms of what happens. As I said, the majority of folk get mild to moderate disease, but it can lead to some serious complications and death both in children and adults. And this is another evolving thing, because initially it was thought that children weren't getting the disease and children were fine. However, of late, you found cases where children have also been majorly affected, leading to serious disease and even death. What's happening really in the body is that this virus causes massive inflammation all around, what they call a cytokine storm, all these little bits and pieces of, for want of a better word, these particles which basically create inflammation all over the body. Also, what has been found is that it causes increased ability for the blood to clot. So you have increased risk of strokes, heart attacks, clots in the veins and the legs called deep vein thrombosis, clots in the lungs called pulmonary embolism. Most people may then, if they do bad, may go on to have acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is basically really bad involvement of the lungs. You may get multiple organs shutting down, you go into shock, and then you die. That is basically the sequelae in terms of for those who really get bad disease. So what is significant, all right? And I want everybody to put this here in their pipe and smoke it. There is significant disease spread by people who don't have any symptoms in terms of asymptomatic people and people who don't have symptoms yet, meaning that you've infected, but you haven't actually developed the symptoms. And it's said that, you know, up to 35% of the COVID-19 patients may be infected and have no symptoms. But these people can still spread the virus, which means that we have almost as much to fear for people who are well and don't show any symptoms as for those who are sick, who we see to be coughing and spluttering and stuff. We still have to have a healthy awareness of the fact that people who don't have symptoms or who don't have symptoms yet can spread the disease and spread it in a way that will be, you know, you can have a really good sense of security for seeing people who you think may be well. The other, on the back end of that there, for people who have recovered, there's still a period after, which may go for a few days to weeks, where you may still shed the virus and potentially may be infected. As of now, there is no vaccine, but there are lots of them under development. There are about 10 companies which are vying to see who can produce, who can probably get the lotto prize and actually develop the vaccine. I'm sure that it will be a big seller throughout the world. The thing is, vaccine development normally takes many years. A lot of companies are fast tracking it to see whether they can produce a vaccine within a year, all right? There's no specific treatment. Lots of them are under development. Lots of them have been being tested and stuff. The only drug that really has basically shown any positive effect is this drug remdesivir, but that's only for really severe cases, people who are ventilated and stuff. And even with that, the actual efficacy is not, not anything to really shout about. So the current treatment really is supportive care. You have fever, you do something for the fever. You have a cough, you do something for the cough. And isolation, in terms that you keep yourself, or whether it's in your home or in an institution, you keep yourself away from causing spread. Right, so diagnosis. As it stands now, we in Barbados are fortunate to have what is called the gold standard for making a diagnosis. And this reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. We have a pretty sophisticated lab called the Best Dos Santos lab, which is located just opposite the Queen Little Hospital. And this here does this high-end test. So the results we get basically are the gold standard with respect to testing. Normally the tests now are available excuse me, at most of the polyclinics. They can also be done at Paragon. There's a center there. Doctors can, it's a little bit easier now for the doctors to refer you to get a test. It's a twofold test. They put a little bit of a swab inside your nose, one to swab the throat. They put it in the media and they send it to the lab. In other places, they're basically testing sputum and saliva. That's not available here now. And again, they've even moved now in the United States because they're trying to test as many people as possible to not only have testing in institutions, but also to let you do a home test. But again, as I said, we don't have that here now. A lot of talk has been made of these antigen and antibody tests, but at this point, based on how sensitive they are and specific, they're not very reliable. A lot of them have come to the fore. A lot of them now have not been approved and found not to be credible. There's no antibody or antigen test now which is accepted as showing being worth its weight in salt. Next slide. Right. So these antibodies, the other thing with these antibodies I want to add, there are two types of antibodies. So you got to be careful in terms of what tests you order, and they come on basically at different points in terms of the illness. But what is not clear is that if you have antibodies, it means that you are immune from the condition. That the jury is still out on that. You may develop antibodies, but we can say with 100% assurity that you are immune to get it again, or you will have long-lasting immunity. Right, and so how do we determine when you're well? So right now, after you have no symptoms for about 3 days or so, you're subjected to 2 of the swabs I spoke about. They must be done 24 hours apart. Once those 2 are negative, you are deemed to be recovered. But as I said, you still may be able to pass on some, you may have some virus lingering in the system, and you still may be able to pass on some infection. And in fact, they've found people who had these 2 negative tests to come back a week or 2 after and test positive. And it doesn't mean that generally you can get it again, but it's just basically smoldering of the process. Right. Now, again, what has not been said and really touted out is that there's a suggestion that the disease may have spread from its origin earlier than initially thought, meaning that we first identified these cases in the media in late December. When they started to go back into like mid last year or so, they have found in some countries some pockets whereby they think that they may have been COVID patients, but obviously they did not know about it. They did not put the pieces together, but they know that is something to note. Why that is noteworthy is that there's a possibility that we here, even in Barbados, before this year, March, and all of our tourist countries and stuff, we may have been exposed to COVID even before all of this hula has come. And the thinking is that there's some countries whereby who has been exposed, and so people may have some level of resistance, and they think that may contribute to the disease pattern and the progression in some of those countries, and that some countries don't seem to have a whole lot of cases. Right, so in terms of what we, just putting the science together in terms of what we know, so we know it's droplet spread, we know basically it's easily spread, and we know that basically, you know, it is going from country to country. So what have basically administrations and jurisdictions done? in terms of trying to prevent spread. They put travel restrictions, as was mentioned before. You know, a lot of international borders have closed, trying to limit the amount of folk who actually come in with the potential to spread. Internally, they've limited population movement. We all know in terms of the curfews, the restaurants closing, the business closing, the inability to congregate. We've had strong country procedures in terms of a quarantine and isolation. Remember, quarantine is for well people who are possibly suspected. Isolation is for people who are actually infected. And again, in terms of testing, initially, testing was limited to travel from certain areas. Now the borders are open internally, and anybody who basically is referred from a doctor can basically get a test without question, because the more you test, the more you know. The more you know, the more you're able to do contact tracing, and that you're able to see who those people have been around, whether family, friends, or so, chase them down, see if you can test them, and be able to control the disease a little bit better. Right. Another staple is this thing in terms of hand hygiene. So we know basically that dirty hands can actually spread the actual virus. People tend to put their hand on their faces, their nose, and so. And so we know that hand washing, 20-second rule or so. I just put my hand on my face, sorry about that. Hand washing basically is key. We know basically whether it's regular soap and water, that's good enough. If you don't have regular soap and water available, appropriate hand sanitizers with greater than 60% alcohol is basically recommended. You try to limit touching to the face. You're pushing in terms of cough and sneezing etiquette, in that you're coughing or sneezing into disposable tissue. If you don't have that, you actually try to do it into your elbow. And we are really pushing enhanced cleaning of surfaces, because the virus, as I said, can subsist on these surfaces for up to 72 hours. So good old bleach and water, or any of the commercial cleaners that are recommended, we're trying to push that to stop the actual contaminated surfaces from causing further infection. Right, key slide, and you can take this here away. This is why basically we are pushing to have public cloth masks. If someone has the condition, whether they know it or not, and they're not wearing a mask, but you're wearing a mask, there's about 75% chance that they could pass it to you. If they're wearing a mask and you're not wearing a mask, that there lessens to 5%. So the masks really are to prevent those people who may have it and not know it from spreading it. It gets even lower if they wear a mask and you wear a mask. That transmission probability goes to about 1.5%. So the moral of this story is the cloth mask, as much as you can, if you can socially isolate, the cloth masks are key. Social distancing, and again, this is something that is a little bit dynamic, because I heard something today that may even push this here a little bit further than the 2 meters that you see there, all depending in terms of whether you're inside, outside, how big the space is. Generally, you know that the droplets can only go a certain distance, roughly about maybe 2 meters or so before they fall to the earth. In the environment, certainly if you're outdoors, that is the case. If you're indoors, they're now re-looking at to see if you need to even go a little bit further. But certainly, if you combine the mask with basically social distancing, that is major prevention against getting the virus. Right. As far as in terms of from your end, things that tourism industry workers and practitioners need to consider. Just a little joke, this temperature screening thing, the normal body temperature is between 35.5 Celsius and probably 37.5 Celsius. Anything over 38 is a fever. Usually it is accepted that certainly if you're less than 32, 31 or so, that you're clinically dead. I have been to maybe 4 or 5 places this week where my temperature has been 30, 29, 28 or so, and the guard just writes it down. I sign and I go my merry way. The moral of that story is that the guards and stuff are told what is high, they're not told what is low, and some people aren't using those thermometers correctly. There's a particular way to use them. If you don't use them correctly, you can as well just put them down, all right? We need to find models in terms of how to deal with persons who are exposed, and that's through the public health mechanism in terms of getting them tested and getting them quarantine, certainly how to deal with the ill worker in terms of basically staying home and getting the appropriate medical intervention, and mental health management. I know, again, Frank Anderson is going to say a little bit about this. Generally, a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are anxious, even more so than actually have or are at risk in terms of getting the disease. And we need to basically embrace that. I think this is the last one. So the education processes such as this that you must push is in terms of not only how the disease goes, but how to prevent it, the procedures in terms of how the general worker does it, how the maid does it, how do you do it to prevent basically infection, and certainly in terms of mental health management. Right. What I want to say is that in terms of, we talk a lot about COVID, but a lot of things have happened during COVID. During the shutdown, if you look at in terms of the second wave and third wave, there are a lot of people who required surgery who didn't get it done. There are a lot of people who are diabetic and hypertensive who didn't go for their medication, and now their diabetes and high blood pressure are out of control. So we are now grappling with this second and third wave, you know, in terms of the fact that people, this is not directly to do with COVID, but this is an indirect result of COVID, whereby people would have neglected themselves, and maybe even in the medical vein, we too may have not, people may have closed their offices, and access to medical care may have not been what it is. And we now are grappling with this. And again, the fourth wave that we're looking at is in terms of the mental trauma. It's not easy staying home all the time, as Jeffrey said early, and obviously there's burnout. Thank you for your attention, and we welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bayer, for that excellent presentation and reminding us of all the things that we should do and we should consider in helping to stop the spread of COVID and to protect ourselves and our families and our co-workers. One of the things I want to encourage everyone is that if you have a question as a presentation is being made and you think of it, just jot it down in the question and answers or in the chat, and we are going to monitor those so that at the end of the presentations, we will then be able to answer all those questions for you. So once you have a question, feel free to jot it down right now so that you don't forget it, because sometimes if you're like me, you will forget it, and then you will lose that opportunity to ask what you wanted to ask. So I know David stressed a lot about mental health management, and I can tell you it has been a very trying 8-9 weeks. I think it's about 9 weeks now. And for some of you folk in the hotel sector, for sure, it has been about 9 weeks. Some people have been on layoff for 8 weeks. Some people are going 9 weeks on layoff. And there is that degree of uncertainty. You are all having to grapple with the fact that you have to, where is your income going to come from? You have children at home who you have to manage, who would normally be at school, and you now have to manage them at home using devices and so on in the house. And obviously, that puts an added burden on you. The other thing is that, and this is the reason why we are having these sessions at 5 in the evening, because we are so, we understand of the challenges that people will have at home while their kids are doing their schoolwork and so on. And they may want to be helping, or you may not want to be on a webinar listening when that device is being used by someone else in the family. We also have people working at home. So there are lots of people in that space who would normally, you would have that opportunity to go outside, to do something else, and have more space in the household in amongst you to get a breather sometimes, etc. And that is not happening. And obviously, all of these are pressures being put on everyone. And that is why we thought that, one of the things that we should try to tackle is to give persons some tips of how to find out where they are in terms of their emotional status. Where are you, and how you can improve, and how you can be more resilient. And that is why we've asked Anderson Kelman, Reverend Kelman, to give us some tips on that. And I know in our sessions that we're talking about, because our sessions go out to the 12th of June, Reverend Kelman is going to come back with a fuller session about mental health and helping us to manage stress. So I want to tell you a little bit about Mr. Kelman, or Reverend Kelman. He's well known. He has a degree in counseling psychology, and he has over 25 years experience in employee assistance programs. I think he is associated with network services, whom many people would be aware of, but he also runs another entity which is called Evergreen Associates, where he also provides counseling services to many Barbadian businesses and individuals in Barbados. And he's quite helpful, and there's a lot that you can learn from Reverend Kelman. I was in a session with him, I think late last year, when we were dealing with discrimination and things like violence in the workplace that was organized by the Ministry of Labor. And I found that his presentation, hit the heart of the matter. And as a result, we're happy to have him with us here today. And I want to invite him now to share with us some of his thoughts on this situation. Reverend Kelman, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Springer, and thank you for having me to present on this very critical part of the whole COVID-19 journey and adjustment. I want to thank the organizers for allowing me to share on this particular webinar. And I think that Dr. Blair has set the context for the discussion in terms of how we manage the stress. I was a little bit, let me say welcome to all participants as well this evening. I was a little bit concerned though when he said that his temperature was below 30, which means he's dead. That has to be quite concerned out there. We need to talk about that. But thanks for establishing the context so well. I want to begin though by just sharing with you some of the normative responses to stress. And I know that sometimes we make a lot of statements, I'm too blessed to be stressed and all those different things, but if we really face it, all of us have a measure of stress. I'm going to talk about the difference between the good stress, the eustress, and the bad stress, which is the distress. But here are some of the normative symptoms that will indicate if someone is under stress. And I want to note that if you observe these particular responses, within the last few days or weeks, this is not your normal reality, but for the last couple of days or weeks, perhaps you're experiencing this kind of symptoms, then maybe you are under some measure of stress. And we have the cognitive ones. I'm not going to author because I'm sure you can see them. This is in terms of anxious thoughts and constant worry. There's some persons who may find themselves, just constantly worrying about everything. Worrying about getting ill, worrying about if COVID-19 is going to impact their family. So there are all kinds of worries. Okay, that's the cognitive domain. Some of them might be also experiencing some emotional challenges in terms of moodiness. 1 minute you are okay, then you're angry or sad. Some persons might feel a persistent sense of being overwhelmed, can't cope, this thing is too hard. I know we're able to go outside now a bit more, but before maybe can't go outside and you feel a sense, someone call it cabin fever, but there's a persistent sense of one's inability to cope and to manage the situation. And then there are the physical realities, aches and pains, loss of sex drive. That's a big one. Persons don't oftentimes realize if it's stress, but it can be the result of stress. And of course, the issue of rapid heartbeat, where you find yourself, heart is beginning to palpitate. Those could be issues that are stress related. And then the behavioral ones and the issue of eating more or eating less. We find that very, very common when persons are under pressure, under stress, they may tend to eat a lot more, eat a lot of sweet things, a lot of binge eating. You find that persons, gorge themselves with things like chocolate and, cheesecakes and those kind of things that are very, very sweet. Or you lose your appetite because the pressures are so great and so intense that, just don't feel like eating. Some persons will sleep a lot, find themselves, straight out of bed in the mornings. And of course, there are a few persons then who will also, take to the substances, alcohol, drugs, prescription drugs, illegal drugs, as a way to dim and to dull the feeling and the challenge. So I want you to look at these symptoms. And I also set up the question, what is my stress map? Which of these symptoms tend to correlate with me in terms of how I deal with stress? How stress is flagged with me, and I want you to just look at them and to know them, because that's going to be important in terms of managing stress, being aware of what impacts on us and in terms of an individual way, and know that stress will impact each person in a different way. So I want to know that as well. So what is this thing called stress? What is it that really causes all of this heartache and challenge and struggle? Well, stress is really any physical or emotional tension that creates or alters our equilibrium. You see, we all function in a state of balance or near balance. A few things may happen to us occasionally that may cause us to feel a bit stressed out, but we tend to, rebound and we cope with it, we deal with it, we move on. So it's a kind of a balance, not perfect, but balance still. Well, what happens is that this balance, when it becomes thrown off or natural rhythm, it creates a measure of stress, and the body responds to it in a very negative way. So here we are. We have the COVID-19 that has shifted the scale. And of course, as someone said, I think Gail said it earlier, it's not just simply the illness, but all the implications. The home has become now a place of work because we had to work from home, and that's an adjustment. And some persons will tell you that they're working even longer now, and more intense because everything's at home. Home has also become a school as well because our children, they can't go to school, and therefore we have to make sure we manage them and to ensure that they're on the computer, the laptop, or whatever device to do their work. And of course, once you put children together, you're going to have some little squabbles, and therefore, home has also become a place where you have to mitigate against those little issues. And to compound that, of course, there are issues of relationships. Maybe some are not as they could be, and having two persons juxtaposed in the same environment who are not really connected so well can also be a very stressful reality. So the COVID-19 and all the implications are basically tip the scale. Of course, we can try to reprioritize and to reduce some of those normal stressors. But the reality of it is that there's something that we are powerless to change because of the reality. And hence, we have to find a way now to be able to develop stronger and better coping skills. So what stress then basically is anything which will cause that element of disequilibrium. And our function or our role or responsibility is to find a way to rebalance that whole process. And I'm sure that for many of you, a part of that COVID-19 reality, as we said before, is the level of unpredictability. Many of you who are in the tourism-related areas are not working, so concerned for money. Maybe you've had certain projects that you were planning to have accomplished this year, and now you have to probably just say, well, probably not this year, probably next year or the following year. So a whole set of adjustment and reprioritization has to occur in the whole context. But the reality of it is still that it is a major adjustment, and therefore we have to find different ways of being able to cope with that element of increased stress. Now, I need to say to all of us, in the chat that the issue of stress really has to do with how our bodies and our minds appraise events in our lives. And of course, the body will respond to stress in the same way it responds to fear. So all the emotions you will get if you were to, go walking one morning and you see a big white Akita dog, standing, bearing its fangs at you, all the adrenaline rush and the fight and flight mechanisms, all that occurs when you're under stress as well. And that's why stress is so dangerous. As a matter of fact, it's perhaps the only mechanism that affects every part of the human body. And that's why we have to be able to manage it, so that once we get beyond the COVID-19 and all that's happening, and we reopen our tourism product that the world needs, that you're ready and willing and able to be able to go with it and to make your mark as you've done pre-COVID. So this is about helping you to be able to stay healthy, stay alert, keep your immune system up so that you can battle any illness and be ready when the gates are being reopened to our visitors. Now, I mentioned before that it affects us physically, emotionally, mentally, that's just some of those symptoms. Of course, they're not exhaustive. There also the issues of, some persons will have physical manifestations of the skin, hives, there are issues in terms of gastrointestinal challenges, diarrhea, I mentioned that before. So these are all the kind of stress symptoms that you can look out for, and to know if that's a part of how you manifest, your stress. I want us though to focus a bit more in this presentation though on how do we manage ourselves during this period. And one of the first things I want to suggest is that it's very, very important to recreate a schedule. What has happened to us is that our normative schedules have been basically not out of sync. And so we're at home and we're not sure what to do, how to do it. We feel a bit depressed and disillusioned. One of the first things in this whole journey is to try to create a schedule that allows you to organize your day. Maybe you start in the morning with a few stretches or exercise, you prepare breakfast, and then maybe you connect with some friends and family on Zoom or whatever. You have a rest, you prepare your meals, and then you connect in the evening on the webinar, which is being given to us today. So have some sort of structure for your day, and create balance between engagement and disengagement. And that's one of the things I want to really, really emphasize, though, that sometimes we over-engage. Okay, let me stick a bit of water there. We over-engage because we're at home. And so that balance is not created. So it's very, very important to ensure that we create balance. And what the schedule does is that it also gives our day a sense of predictability, a sense of movement, productivity. But it should also be very flexible in terms of of making sure that if something happens, we can shift and attend to whatever that might be. So the first important principle is to recreate some kind of schedule, some kind of ordering of our day. The second important principle for managing stress is to remember to build a support network. I know we can't visit each other's houses, maybe we used to, and have friends over, but we have the different platforms where we can connect with persons, you know, in terms of WhatsApp and Zoom and Slack and all of them. So have that sense of connection. What I've found is that when we have individuals that we can talk with and share with, and we can open ourselves to be vulnerable with, it reduces that level of pressure or stress that we sometimes have. So create those networks. Remember that today you may feel strong, but tomorrow we need someone to talk with, and vice versa. You know, and be open with how we feel. You know, get it out. We talk about catharsis in terms of counseling. You know, when we share stuff, share emotions, you know, it allows us to be able to rest a lot calmer. And always plant the seed of hope. Yeah, it will be difficult now, but we will get beyond this point, you know, as we continue. So build a support network. Thirdly, reduce the levels of stress and exercise. I mentioned that one before in terms of ordering our day. Exercise is really critical. What we found is that it has the potential to reduce and to mop up the effects of stress. So, like I said to you before, the whole stress response, you know, is centered around that whole fight or flight mechanism. You know, the adrenaline flow, the heart rate increases, our blood sugars rise in our system. So those persons who are diabetic may realize that, you know, even though you're taking medication, blood sugar is still high because you're under stress. But what exercise does is that it mops up those things. It uses the blood sugar in the system. It will eventually push our heart rate down, our pressure down. So it's a very important element in terms of managing and reducing our levels of stress. Learn to breathe, relax, you know, stop, you know, look through the window, admire the plants. You know, some of us, we build nice houses with you know, verandas, and we hardly get a chance to sit in them and to look at the lovely garden that they're paying to have manicured. So stop, sit, breathe. And you know, this may sound simple, but sometimes we're so rushed that we forget the simple things of life. Laugh more. Laugh at yourself as well, you know. Don't take yourself too serious. You know, sometimes we become so serious with ourselves and so under pressure. Laugh more and manage relationships. And that fourth one is very important, even at this time of COVID, because there are times when, you know, we have to engage our loved ones, and in those cases where maybe the relationship is not as it could be, and just engage, talk about it, you know, because you don't want to be, you know, in a house where, you know, mother and father, husband and wife, whoever, are not getting along very well, you know, and that can put more pressure at this time. So talk to your partner, you know, if you need to get a third person through social media, through Zoom or something, to talk with you, fine, but try to manage relationships. That's important with reference to reducing the levels of stress. So exercise, like I said, you know, very important and critical. Reflect. What lessons am I learning at this time? You know, what wins can I celebrate? Maybe, you know, this is a time when you can learn a new skill. You know, there are a lot of colleges that are offering free online courses, you know, new learning, you know, and the fourth of allow your thoughts to be edited. And I want to stay there for a few minutes, though. I know that I have to kind of you know, manage my time carefully here, but in terms of your thoughts, sometimes, you know, we think stuff that is not necessarily true. Everything we think about ourselves is not necessarily true. And sometimes when we're under stress, you know, we can have all kind of negative thoughts, you know, don't get anything done right. Look, I don't have any money, you know, I'm laid off, you know, my taxi is not working, you know, this is my only means of survival. What I'm going to do, you know, I've messed up again, I failed again. So we have all these kind of negative thoughts. And the truth of the matter, though, is that sometimes when you talk to someone, so our thoughts can be edited. So persons can help us to understand the fallacy and the error of our thinking. Oftentimes we hold those thoughts to ourselves, and one negative thought will spawn another negative thought. And before you know it, you find yourself in a position where you feel totally and absolutely depressed or maybe probably anxious. So find someone you can talk with, again, don't about relationships, and let them help to edit those negative thoughts. Reinvent yourself. Yes, it's been a difficult time, no doubts about that. It's been tough, and you know, you may begin to reflect on how good it used to be, but it's important to grieve the past, because the reality of it is that we're not going back, we're going forward. So grieve the past. Take an inventory of self. What is it that I need to do to get to where I want to get to? What skills do I need to learn? How can I use what is being provided by these webinars to retool and to sharpen my skills? What new skills? Create a new trajectory for yourself moving forward. So the point I'm making here is that it's a crisis, but in the crisis, there's the potential for us to learn and to grow and to become better positioned as we move forward. I'm told that the word crisis in Japanese has two meanings. First, has a meaning of loss, but also meaning of opportunity. And how well we manage ourselves and take care of our bodies and take care of our minds, that mind-body connection will be very critical in terms of how ready we are when the time comes for us to once again, begin to move through the open gates in terms of tourism. And so I want to say to all of us, that even though it's difficult, we can manage our stress. We can keep ourselves in a place where we can be healthy and ready and poised for the continuing adventure in terms of our tourist industry. And I invite any questions you may have when that time will come. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Reverend Kelman, for that insightful presentation on how we should manage stress at this time, at this very challenging time. I want to let the participants know that this session is being recorded. So both Dr. Byers and Reverend Kelman's presentations are being recorded so that you can visit them at a later date when you want to refresh on what tips that they have offered. We have some questions here, and I know Dr. Bayer has been busy answering some of them, but I know that there are also some that he has answered privately, which I will also probably get him to repeat, because there seem to be a lot of questions about the whole concept of the temperature and the taking of temperatures and the use of cloth masks. So there was one question, and it's very important, especially for everyone to get an idea, because everyone is talking about these cloth masks and saying that it's very difficult to use. And I've even had a company where an employee he's in the front line, and he completely refused to use the mask because he said he felt claustrophobic. And therefore, I don't know what tips you can give Dr. Bayer about this fact that is it necessary? It's making me difficult. It's difficult to breathe. I feel claustrophobic. Do I have to wear it all the time? Give us some tips on that. That would be worthwhile.
Right. So again, I guess you got to weigh the risks in terms and the benefit of these things. And for sure, if you're not accustomed wearing masks, it could be a little bit uncomfortable to start, because it is claustrophobic. Some people don't like things on their face. In terms of the science, though, in terms of whether it causes low oxygen, increased carbon dioxide and stuff, someone had asked. I mean, for you to get symptoms from high carbon dioxide, that one probably obtain in a cloth mask. You probably need to put a plastic bag over your head or something like that there to get that level of carbon dioxide build up. So I think the symptoms come more, not so much from the lack of oxygen or the increase in carbon dioxide, but again, from a little bit of anxiety and panic from the actual thing on the face. I mean, the simple answer to that is to give yourself scheduled breaks. If you can find yourself to move away for a small period of time and free yourself of the mask, whether you're driving, whether you're going outside to just get a look around, do that. That's probably the best advice. I mean, even for us who may wear them for prolonged periods of time in terms of medical procedures and stuff, we know that they're uncomfortable. You get accustomed to it after a while. But certainly, we also understand that, you know, it can be a problem for people who are now wearing them for the first time. The other thing you asked quickly about in terms of the thermometers, in terms of temperature. So the normal body temperature is between 35.5 to 37.5 Celsius. As I said, fever is defined greater than 38 degrees Celsius. Usually if you're lower than 35 degrees Celsius, you start to call that the word hypothermia. When you're down 32, 31, 20, 30, as Reverend Kelman said, you know, you're approaching basically death if you're not there already. Now, what I think, though, in terms of these thermal thermometers that people are using, I mean, each of them has instructions. Some of them are for the forward, some of them are for the actual temple. They need to be held for a certain time to be able to register. And also, if they're too far away from the skin, they will measure the ambient air between the actual skin and the actual reading component. So you'll be actually measuring the temperature in terms of the room. So hence, that's why you find that temperatures of 28, 29, 30, 31 are logged in the book when you peep and see basically what other people's temperatures are. That's basically what they're doing. So that may be a little bit down in terms of to training as well as to following the manufacturer's instructions.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Bayer. There's another interesting question, which I think for general information is is it accurate that both men and women are equally susceptible to contracting coronavirus? The mortality rate for men is twice that of women. That was a question asked, so I think that's something that we generally would want to know.
Certainly not twice. And I don't think on behalf of Anderson and Jeffrey, I'm going to let you guys have a one-up on us today, this Friday evening. It is not significant. It depends on where you are in terms of when they do the male to female. What I can say, though, is that in the United States, is that certainly from a color perspective, they have a lot more African Americans and stuff, but that's not a product of the color either. That's maybe a product in terms of the living circumstances and the social status in terms of how close they are and how basically things are done. But to answer that question, there's no gender bias with this one. So sorry about that one. That's certainly not clinically indicated with respect to in any major way.
Okay, I can take you, okay, Jeffrey. You're glad to hear that. I'm sure all the men on at this session are glad to hear that. I'll take you off the hotspot now, David, and I'll just, I think this one is going closer to Jeffrey. Will the hotels be opened up gradually with limited occupancy?
All right. The simple answer to that is yes. However, there's no simple answer at this time. Because yes, when travel does resume, it is not going to resume at the same level that it would have been when COVID struck us. You know, because all the source markets are going through what we're going through. And they're going to re-emerge at different points along the continuum. So we don't anticipate that on one day, travel is going to free up 100% across all the destinations from which our source markets, our source tourists originate. So yes, it will be a gradual reopening and a gradual building up of the clientele again. When that will happen, certainly we can't say at this point because as Tanisha pointed out earlier, and as she referred to the PM's statements, the reopening of Barbados is not based on any specific date. It is really going to be based on the science and what's happening in the markets in terms of the protocols being established there and here. the status of the COVID situation in those markets and in our market as well.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-up question for you, in your capacity now as the CEO of the Barbados Sport Inc. Not Barbados Sport Inc. The Cruise Terminals Inc. Sorry, let me get it straight. Cruise Terminals. He's the CEO in his capacity. It says, what will the procedures for Chapel House employees or other workers may enter the port? And I would assume those are the Chapel House type entities that are in the port. You want to know the procedures?
So that's in retail space.
Yeah.
So the protocols for the Chattel House and any retailer operating in the port and cruise terminal arena will be the same as far as what we require. Currently, there are some protocols in place. We're also developing further protocols. As David said, this is a moving target, things changing all the time. But currently I can say that certainly on entering the port property, everyone has to have their temperature taken, and it is a requirement for everyone to wear a mask, right? We expect persons also to follow the Ministry of Health protocols with regard to sanitization, social distancing, etc. We've also been working on, and I was working on it just last night again, additional protocols that we need to set up within that space. Because we recognize that when cruising resumes, it is going to mean that you're going to have to deal now with a situation where we're dealing with cruise passengers coming in, crew members, local operators, etc. So in addition to all the things that the Ministry of Health has stipulated as the proper protocols, there will be additional requirements from our end. And this is applicable to all the tourism entities, particularly tourism and hospitality. There are protocols being developed for the hotels, right, for their operation. Likewise, for water sports operators, there need to be protocols established for them. Yeah, so there need to be proper protocols established across every spectrum of engagement in tourism and hospitality. And the truth is that it's going to take quite a bit of work, because if we take hotels, for example, you can develop some baseline protocols for hotels, but not every hotel operation is the same. So there are some things that might happen in one hotel that might not happen in another, right? You got to ensure that beyond the baseline protocols, you evaluate your operating environment critically and ensure that all of the things that you need to have in place to keep your staff and guests safe are incorporated. I'll give you one example in closing. When I looked back at our protocols last night, I realized that one of the things that we had omitted to address was the use of shared vehicles. So if we have a vehicle that is used during the day by more than one person, what is the protocol that we're going to put in place to ensure that when it is finished, when use is finished by one person, it's probably sanitized, and there's a checklist to ensure that you've done certain sanitization processes, so that when the second person takes that vehicle up, they're comfortable to drive that vehicle.
Okay. Okay. I guess this next question is really for me and Miss and Reverend Kelman. It says, what can managers do to assist an employee who is stressed? How can we help? What is the organization's responsibility? And I will just say that as an HR practitioner, once we identify, or a manager identifies that as an employee who is showing particular symptoms of stress, and it can come in various forms. It could come in punctuality. It could come in their interactions with their colleagues, and so on. Their inability to meet deadlines, their interaction with customers, etc. And once that is seen, then immediately we should try to have a chat with that employee and see how best we can provide assistance. And that is what you would do. Your HR manager, or even your line manager, will try to get that employee. Of course, you have to get their how you would say, you have to coach them into the fact that they should seek assistance. And then we will engage someone like Anderson, and he would then take it from there. So Anderson, you want to tell us what you would do when we do a referral to you as an HR manager of an employee who is exhibiting stress?
Thank you, Gail. Well, if someone is manifesting stress symptoms, then we want to do an inventory of the stresses that they're going through. And of course, there's some they can eliminate, but then there's some they can't, and therefore strengthening their ability to cope and to manage would be our focus. Let me say though that persons under stress are more prone to accidents. They're more prone to making errors, and therefore you really want to make sure anyone who's having any stressful event that they're able to find that kind of support that they would need. And of course, Gail, I would say that companies need to be able to have resources and support mechanisms for individuals. And I think that this COVID-19 reality will really reinforce that as well, because a lot of persons are coming back, a lot of fears, a lot of concerns. Some justify, some not, maybe a little bit, overstated, but there are a lot of persons who will have a tremendous amount of fears, and you want to be able to find a way to reassure them so they can return to a measure of productivity. Because if they're under stress, chances are they're not as productive as they could be, and therefore that will be down to a loss with reference to the organization.
Okay, we have a question here. I'm not sure, this is probably directed to Jeffrey, really. It says, is anybody aware of an eventual ongoing discussion with government of the possibility to cancel or establish a moratorium for a room levy share economy tax for tourists for a specific time or season to try a bit more price competitive, to be a bit more price competitive with all the other worldwide aggressive competitors with beautiful and empty destinations? And I believe between Jeffrey and Tanisha, I don't know if you want to tackle, both of you want to tackle that question.
Well, I can make a comment, but I know the CEO of the BHD is also on. But
yes.
The person is asking about an ongoing discussion with the government of the possibility to cancel or establish a moratorium on the room rate levy.
Yes.
I am not aware of any such discussion, but we can certainly follow up to see if there is, or if it had been raised, and if it has been, what is the status?
Okay. Tanisha, you have any comment?
No, similar to Jeffrey, I am not aware of the conversation, but we need to follow up.
Okay. Another question says, and I believe this is for Dr. Bayer, I noticed that many persons are handling their masks from the outside, whether it is adjusting, taking off, or simply just touching. Can there be more information sharing to sensitive people of the correct way of handling their masks? I don't know if you want to go through. I think there has been some information put out about that, but I don't know if you want to go over the correct way of handling masks. And I believe that there was also another question that talked about the difference between a medical mask and a cloth mask, and which should people use, because you see some people using the medical type mask and some people using the cloth mask. David?
Right, so let me go with that one first. So the dirtiest or the exposed part of the mask is the front of the mask, which is the, I guess, the public facing element of the mask. Certainly it is basically recommended that when you're removing the mask that you go from behind your ears, or if you have the ones that are tied behind your head, you do that there first, so that you have as little contact with that surface there as possible. Generally, people may take the mask off and then put their hand in their face, which is defeatist. The thing is, in terms of once you take the mask off from behind the ears or behind the head and allow it to drop into the garbage or so, or if it's a reusable one, just be mindful that that front area of the mask is the problem area, dangerous area. You should be okay. I mean, mask wearing goes also hand in hand with hand hygiene. So you need to make sure every time you touch the mask that you either use hand sanitizer or wash your hands. Because basically you will still basically expose yourself in terms of to your hands in terms of having some level of virus on. In terms of the medical mask versus cloth mask, I tell you, to be honest, the actual surgical mask and even to the N95 to some extent The surgical masks are usually made of like a paper-based substance. If you wear them for long enough, particularly if you're in an external environment or here where it's very humid, they'll get wet. Once that they become wet, the protection goes. So therefore, you find that basically you see people wearing them for entire days, see people wearing them outside and stuff. You can see their lips and stuff plastered onto the inside of the mask. Again, they could as well probably not use it. I mean, really and truly, you probably get more protection in terms of a cloth mask, which can hold the moisture and stuff. Remember, the masks basically are to prevent a lot of times in terms of you for pushing stuff out to the environment. I mean, it protects you in some way, but certainly you are basically entrusted in terms of protecting those around you when you wear the cloth mask. Lastly, the N95 mask, which you see some people wear. Again, those are quite suffocated. Even the people who basically wear those for prolonged periods of time have problems breathing with them because they have to have a tight seal against your face. So again, people tend not to make the seals, so they're loose and they're probably not as efficacious as maybe just simply using the cloth mask. So, I mean, it is advocated for general public in terms of cloth. I mean, in terms of the medical arena where the risk is greater, generally we wear the surgical mask. We usually, for the most part, do that in an AC environment, and we change them frequently.
Actually, and there's a follow-up question to that where someone just posted that some persons are spraying their cloth mask with Lysol after use as a measure of sanitization, letting it dry and reusing it. Aren't they supposed to be washed with soap?
So again, in terms of the Lysol bit, I suppose that's some sort of anti-disinfectant and stuff. The cloth mask, generally, it is recommended that they're washed after, at the end of the day. If you actually spray them, you probably need to let them dry, again, because if they get wet, remember that those disinfectants, they have some level of water or so in terms of basically the base. If you get them wet, sometimes that protection will go away. So they have to be dry masks you're wearing for the most part, and the Lysol, I guess, theoretically can help, but if it's a wet mask, you're not gonna have the protection.
Okay, and then there is another question here for what's the position with the tourism fund that was announced by the Prime Minister? How do we get access to it? I believe, Jeffrey, in your role, you might want to give some pointers on how to access it or give them further information to follow up on.
I would suggest, I recommend to the person that they contact the PHD office and we can guide them in terms of accessing our procedures to follow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm looking here. Any more questions? I'll invite one more question.
I just wanted Gail to just
sure.
offer a comment in relation to the tourism fund.
And that's Senator Grant speaking, yes?
Rudy Grant, yes. And just to indicate that we are in discussions with the Ministry of Finance. There are some provisions which are being put in place. I know that a draft document has been prepared and we expect very shortly to receive an updated version. And as we discuss it more and once it is finalized, we will ensure that we share with our members. But we are very conscious of the fact that we need to get that fund up and running as quickly as possible.
Okay. Any final comments from anyone? I have want to share with the participants our next steps after any final wrap-up comments from any of you, from any of the panelists, Reverend Kelman.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you, Gil. I just want to say that it's important we keep talking and keep talking to each other with reference to our fears. I know that this is a time of phenomenal fear, but there are some things that we can control and some things we can't control. And so those that we can control, we need to control. And those we can't, then find a way to kind of deal with it. So I would say to everyone, you know, find someone you can talk with or share with. Exercise critical in terms of managing your stress at this juncture in our journey.
Final words, David.
So I mean, the cold hard truth is that COVID is probably going to be with us for another couple of years or so until maybe they find a vaccine, or basically, I guess enough people get it whereby that, you know, if there's some level of immunity and stuff, it goes away to some extent. I mean, we're doing quite well now in terms of the cases have slowed up, but certainly I think everybody anticipates that when the borders reopen and there's more activity and stuff happening, even internally, you'll probably see some more cases coming through. And I mean, you shouldn't be alarmed, but that is probably the expected thing. People talk about this second surge. Hopefully it's not a large surge, it's just a few manageable cases. But what I would say though is that the legacy of some of the things that we are doing now in terms of the cleaning, the enhanced cleaning, in terms of basically the cough etiquette, sneezing etiquette, in terms of hand washing and use of hand sanitizers. I mean, really or truly, if you ask yourself, they probably should have been entrenched before in terms of normal practice. Obviously, we don't do them, I don't do them and stuff like that. So it's been a stark reminder for all of us in terms of the risk, in terms of infection. And hopefully, from what we have started now to ramp up in all of our sectors and stuff like this there, hopefully the legacy effect in terms of the increased cleaning, the more meticulous attention to hand hygiene and stuff is something that we carry forward, because as we highlighted again, we've come this way before with Ebola, we've come this way before with SARS and H1N1 and stuff. These viruses are churning out. So it will just be a matter of time. And if we basically get ourselves together in terms of the prevention, the infection prevention strategies, I think that we'll be good for future potential pandemics.
Jeffrey, any final words?
I was actually typing a note in the chat for all the participants, but yes, you know, I think that I endorse what's been said before. And, you know, I think in discussions we recognize that COVID-19 is not going anywhere in any hurry. You know, the spread of it will be reduced. Yes, we've seen that happening, and I think through the efforts of the government and, you know, the persons listening and obeying the instructions, we've managed to drive the spread down. But it will be something we have to live with for a while. As such, you know, I want to encourage everyone to play their part to ensure that we can survive safely. Business can continue amid this, well, it might not be a pandemic at that stage, but amid this crisis. You know, we can survive this, but we can only survive it by working together. You know, and I think the choice of name for this program, Barbets Together, is very appropriate. That's the only way we can beat this. I think you're muted, Gail. I think, Gail, you're on mute.
Still muted.
There, I'm still muted. I'm sorry. I was inviting Tanisha to give us some tips or her final thoughts before I give some ideas on what are next steps in this program called Barbets Together to the participants.
Sure,
Tanisha?
Gail. Sure. I just want to thank the panelists for sharing their insights. They've definitely been thought-provoking and definitely relevant to the time that we are all experiencing. I want to provide a bit of hope. You know, as I mentioned before, there's no doubt that persons will return to our island. There's no doubt that tourism will flourish again. But echoing Jeffrey's sentiments, this is something that we will achieve together by working together as a sector and as an industry. So I encourage everyone to take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Before everyone runs off, I just want to show you what our next steps are going to be. Oops, let's get my next steps here. The Barbados Together program that we are putting together, e-learning program, and what's in it for everybody, really and truthfully. Webinar sessions will be over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, to just get that, oops. sorry, okay, great. Oops, from beginning. Okay. What's in it for me, really? The sessions will provide upliftment in a period of uncertainty. It will provide information tools to protect employees and family, help with stress and mental health concerns, renew our commitment to tourism in order for Barbados to emerge stronger than ever. It will be an opportunity to learn new skills and upgrade or refresh, and an opportunity to get certification. Because when we finish this series of webinars, the intention is to create a certain level of e-learning programs whereby persons will be able to get certification on an e-learning platform. So that is the next steps that we hope to achieve in the Tourism Task Force. We want to help Barbados improve overall its service quality and its product offerings. So how we're going to do that over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to have some other exciting webinars, and employees will be able to sign up through their companies, and there will be a full schedule of the sector-specific skills-based programs, and these will be run over the next 6 months. We are working to utilize all our resources such as BCC, the Hospitality Institute, UE, as well as in-house certified hospitality trainers across the industry in many areas. And I'm just appealing to anyone who is on the program today that if you are a certified hospitality trainer and you wish to help, please contact the BHDA or the BTMI and offer your services, because we are going to be putting skills online, and therefore we have to be able to train those persons who would traditionally deliver programs and academic programs and skills-based programs in a classroom setting to be able to deliver them online. And as you can see, I am here trying to facilitate and get all my slides run and so on. So it is actually a whole process that we all now have to learn. It is a new normal, and therefore all of us, we all have to try to learn it. And I'm not afraid of learning it, so everybody else should also try to learn it as well. And what we're doing going forward is that the next set of seminars, we're going right out until the 12th of June. And on the 2nd, we're having a session called Safe Work, Safe People. And we're looking at some of the workplace safety for tourism employees. As you're aware, there are tourism employees still at work today. There are restaurant employees that have gone back out. And as of Monday, restaurants are going to be dealing with in-dining. And therefore, we want to talk about safe work, safe people. And we're going to have the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Labor. And we're also going to have one of our hoteliers, Renee Copping, who are going to be part of that panel. And we're going to have a very lively and insightful discussion. We will also be joined in that session by a trade union representative, and we're working to get one of them to be part of that session. And then on the 3rd of June, we're going to be talking about change and how we're going to surf the waves of change. And Tony Olton, the founder of EQ Barbados, is going to be taking us through that session. On the 5th of June, there's going to be a lovely event called Island Jam. It's a house party for tourism employees. It's really a pick-me-up. It's really to say, hey, look, this is my industry, and I haven't made contact with my friends and in other sectors for a while. This is an opportunity for all of us to join the house party. We're going to get a popular DJ to host that. We're going to have the culinary team, and they're going to come and do some demonstrations. The mixologist is coming to show us how to make a few drinks and so on. We're going to have some guest entertainers who will come and shout us out. I don't know if we could convince one of them to perform, but we will work on that. We'll look at quizzes, and we have an employee chat. So that is going to be a very lively event next Friday, same time on this same channel, if you want to put it that way. And on the 8th of June, we're going to talk about managing our personal finances. As we say, money is tight. And we would have listened last night to the Prime Minister and the economic specialists talking about how tight the economic situation in Barbados is, and therefore we have to be more thrifty in what we do in managing our personal finances. And Melinda Bell, a finance expert, is going to come and give us some tips there. And then on the 10th, we're going to be dealing with leading in times of crisis. And Norma Shuri from Catalyst Consultant, she is going to be leading that session. And that session is targeted at leaders in the industry. And then on the 12th, we're going to be dealing with our physical and mental health. And we will have a gym instructor who will come on board, and they will be showing us how to maintain our physical health within our curtilage. That's a new word that I learned, within our curtilage. Although now we can go to the beach and so on of a Monday, maybe we also still have to do things at home, because gyms and so on are not open as yet. And therefore, if you want to keep physically fit, as Reverend Kelman said, getting exercise is